In the middle of the 16th century, the Treaty of Lublin united the crowns of Poland and Lithuania to form a commonwealth, transferring all of the Ruthenian lands, including today's Ukraine, from Lithuania to the Polish crown. This new, primarily Orthodox population agreed to unite with the Catholic Church in the Union of Brest, but this was seen as a betrayal by Ukraine's rural and wild frontier inhabited mainly by Cossacks. The Cossacks had organized themselves in southern Ukraine under the Zaporozhian host, and their ranks bolstered over the decades due to escaped serfs, townspeople, noblemen, and converted Crimean Tatars, and soon became a nuisance to the Ottomans by constantly raiding the Crimean Khanate. Over time, the Cossacks would go on to form an integral part of the Polish armies, especially in their wars with the Ottomans, but soon the Poles grew fearful of the Cossacks' power. They began restricting enlistments to the Cossack armies and also withheld wages, which caused rebellions such as the one in 1637. During the same period, a lesser noble from central Ukraine named Khmelnytsky had joined the Cossacks and risen through their ranks. But as a landowner, his estate fell under the domain of Stanisław Koniecpolski, a prominent military commander. Stanisław died in 1646, which led to a dispute between his son Alexander and Khmelnytsky over the rights to the land, and the Polish crown were unwilling to intervene. So Bohdan turned to the Cossacks for help in rebellion against the Polish crown, but was arrested before he got the chance. News of his arrest attracted many more supporters, and the Cossacks who had held him secretly broke him free and rose up in rebellion in January 1648. Khmelnytsky's rebellion won him more and more support, allowing him to easily be elected hetman of the Sich and form an alliance with the Tatars, who were promised money, slaves, and land. The Poles' early attempts to put down the uprising were unsuccessful. Many Cossacks in their own ranks joined the rebellion at Żółte Wody in April, and at the Battle of Korsun, the Polish forces were crushed. The Polish administration struggled to form a united front against the Cossacks due to the fact that Władysław IV Vasa had recently died, and the elected monarchy was yet to appoint a new king. Khmelnytsky arrived in Bila Tservka, demanding the returning of wages and Orthodox churches back to Ruthenia. Initially satisfied with this gain, he then departed, but as the uprising gained more support from Ukraine's peasants, he took the opportunity to invade Poland, besieging the fortified cities of Zamość and Zbaraj. However, by this point, John Casimir II had finally been elected king and organized a force to push the Cossacks back. John then cleverly paid the Tatars to leave the rebellion, and Khmelnytsky's zeal petered out after the Poles agreed to return Orthodox churches to Ruthenia, and crucially ban an immigration on Jews, many of whom were slaughtered in the rebellion. After a 2-year-long truce period, tensions began to rise again over the religious authority of Ukraine, and the two sides met again at the Battle of Berestechko, the largest battle in the entire century. After days of fighting, the more than 200,000 rebels were driven back when the Polish hussars besieged the Cossack camp, causing the Tatars to abandon the field and take Khmelnytsky prisoner. The Tatars then released him and forced him into signing a humiliating peace treaty which would reverse all concessions from Poland up until that point. However, the treaty was never ratified by the Commonwealth's parliament and hostilities continued. The Tatars rejoined the Cossacks once more at the Battle of Bati, and the victorious host would kill more than 8,000 Polish-Lithuanian prisoners in an event now known as the Bati Massacre. Khmelnytsky knew he would need outside support if the rebellion was to achieve any of its aims, and so they allied themselves with Russia, who invaded in 1654. The Swedes entered the conflict as well, seeking to take advantage of a weakened Poland, and the Tatars abandoned the Cossacks once again, fearing the growing influence of Russia. When the Russians concluded a separate peace treaty with Poland in order to form a united front against Sweden, the Cossacks took it as an act of betrayal and switched over to Sweden's side. Unfortunately for the Cossacks, Khmelnytsky would die from a brain hemorrhage in 1657, making the host appear weak and leaderless. The Poles then used this to their advantage, pushing the Cossacks back into a stalemate. The Commonwealth then attempted to bring the Cossacks back under their control by diplomacy, paving the way for Ruthenia to be elevated as an equal constituent kingdom, making a Polish, Lithuanian, and Ruthenian state. The Treaty of Hadiach was signed between the two parties and the Cossacks' new hetman, Ivan Vysotsky, but was seen by many Cossacks as too little too late, many of whom argued for stronger ties to Orthodox Russia. The Cossack hetmanate would ultimately remain in a state of limbo for decades between the two powers, split between a left and a right bank on the Dnieper River, leading to further civil unrest and ultimately a period of near constant warfare known as the Ruin. If you'd like to learn more about Ukraine, why not come check out my History of Ukraine video over at Sweeney.